Hi, it's Conor Svensson here, founder and CEO of Web3 Labs. This is a conversation I had with Maria Pennanen, co-founder of Accelerator Frankfurt and CEO of Mindclip Behaviour. Maria is an established angel investor and entrepreneur and leading voice in the European startup ecosystem. In our conversation, we discussed the parts of Web3 she is most excited about, diversity in Web3, and some of the mistakes and misconceptions that founders have, which prompted her to write her book, How to Fuck Up Your Startup. Maria has been through the highs and lows of Web3 during the past 5 years, and I'm sure you'll find some great takeaways from our conversation. Maria, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here on the podcast today. You're
Thank
a
you.
very you're, you're a very prominent figure in the European startup ecosystem. Tell me about how you first got interested in Web3.
Well, I think I first heard about it probably somewhere, a long time ago. I think with the financial crisis 2009, like there's some kind of blockchain stuff coming, but I really didn't think much of it at that time. And then, when we got further, into the, let's say, the crypto scene, and so we set up this Accelerator Frankfurt in Frankfurt 2015. I think around 2017 it became quite a, this big boom with all kind of ICOs, and we also had some startups that were into that space. So at that time, I was still a little bit skeptical about, since I'm a business angel myself, that how will it go that you don't have any control of the assets that you're giving. So it felt to me a bit, shaky that how, but I still had a great belief that people are going to manage the money wisely. And I think some good project, of course, came out of it. But I think then it was quite fast ending in 2019. And I think now, it's probably become a little bit more, mature with the DeFi and stuff like that. And we have, some horrible examples of the DAOs that failed, but still, I think the space is becoming more mature. And I think we are hopefully going to have in the next few years some very nice products coming out that people can really use.
And so it sounds like the timing was very fortuitous in terms of launching the accelerator. You had the kind of growth of fintech businesses in the early part of the 2010s, and then, as you say, sort of Web3 started to develop a bit more interest in terms of ICOs and everything that came with it. Have you seen, like as you mentioned, DeFi and DAOs are kind of something there's been a lot more activity around recently, in NFTs. But have you found that there's been a big increase in the number of businesses focusing on Web3 opportunities as well? Because of course your background is fintech, SaaS, and these sort of very well established software businesses. And so is it starting to influence that a lot more in terms of the cohorts that you're hosting?
Well, I think it was before COVID started. I think we had decided to focus a little bit more on the blockchain space, and I think we had some really interesting startups there. Then, of course, COVID started, and we did run one program fully online, and I think we had actually good response and good applications there. And at the same time, I started thinking that it's actually shocking how little female founders we have. Because I ran the numbers and I realized that of all the startups that we had, I think almost 40, we had one female founder. And I thought, okay, maybe now it's time, since we were anyway online, to try to do something about it. And I realized that maybe also the way we run the program at Accelerator Frankfurt is that they are actually normally rather established companies. So they not established, but established in a startup way. So normally they had already had their first funding, they had a product, they had normally had some clients. And maybe female founders needed like help earlier on, so that they would actually decide to set up a company. So we ran a couple of programs with very early stage female founders, and there also we had actually some companies that were loosely attached also to the Web3. But I would say now I can't say that we have seen a huge surge in the applications that will be in this space. But I do say that I think they are becoming maybe more mature, the ideas that we see, that it's not anymore totally like theoretical stuff, but there's actually that they try to solve something real. So yeah, so maybe let's say the ideas are more mature than they used to be.
Yeah. There's fewer ICOs and people figuring out actually what are going to be viable products there. And you mentioned there, of course, the female founders angle there, and with respect to the technology field, of course, it's very it's a very hot topic in terms of the lack of well, diversity, but also representation from females there. Do you think that it's any different in Web3? Because I love Web3 because of all the different people it brings together. You've got like the world of NFTs with like, you know, brands jumping on board with it, and it's really kind of crossed the, you know, chasm, so to speak, in my view, in terms of mainstream adoption
Mm.
there. And so, and the fact that it has the opportunity to impact people from all walks of life. Do you see that kind of affecting the, I guess, the landscape of females involved in the space, or, you know, in your view, does it still seem kind of similar to more conventional tech in that regard?
No, I do think that I think it's maybe it's like it's easier for females to get into this space because it is young, and I think there is like nobody is really that established, so to say. And I think because it's a lot of it happens online, so it's easier to get access to people. It's easier to be part of it than, you know, maybe some fintech or some other things that you have to in person. You have to first get invited even to, you know, to be able to attend certain, you know, events. So I think in that way, it probably does make it more inclusive, and I do think that maybe the hurdles are lower. So you can, and I think also because of all these different kind of opportunities to get funding for your projects, you know, with all kind of grants, what you have. So I think I at least I hope, and I do. It seems to be that there's more females there involved with great ideas.
That's really positive to hear. And I think another point on that, I mean, there must be, and I'm sure this is something you're asked a lot, but then what are kind of the good approaches that company owners or businesses who want to increase the diversity within their workforce and so on, you know, what are good steps that they can take? Because it's very well recognized that a diverse workforce is great, just in terms of,
Mm.
you know, the ideas being brought to the table, different approaches, different ways of solving problems. So it's, you know, it really is a win-win thing. But, you know, as someone in your position, I'm sure you've got some, you know, extra insights into the different angles that companies
Yeah.
can take here.
Well, I think, you know, since I have 3 degrees and my last one is in organizational psychology, I'm an engineer to start with. So I started like this in a box, and life is A to B, and then I widened a bit more, you know, with an MBA, and then I think with the organizational, when you start thinking about the behavior part of, you know, why do things happen the way they do. So of course we are, you know, we are packed animals. We rather hang out with people who are like us. So I think that's the problem with, you know, when you're hiring people, also that you don't want to make mistakes. So how do you avoid mistake? By hiring something that you already had. So, and of course, you can't get diversity if you are looking for that 35-year-old male with, you know, I don't know, 5 years of, you know, experience in a certain field. So I think many people talk about it that, you know, they hire for the you know, for the ability and not actually the track record. But I think if everybody knows, whoever applied for a job, that that's not the case. So I think that there, you know, the idea is how could you help people to actually to understand that why is it important to have diversity. So actually I set up a company that has nothing to do with blockchain, but it's looking at this angle of, you know, behavior and helping companies to understand that, you know, what kind of groups work better, and that if you would actually want to take it maybe in, let's say, five years, we would be so far that we could actually look at the behavior of people and realize that in our team we are missing a certain kind of behavior type, and then we could actually go even inside of the company, look for that kind of behavior type, of course, that they have the competencies needed, and then, you know, we could make the companies more diverse. I think they a long time ago already started doing this with music, like with symphony orchestras, when they started doing the, you know, the plays, when they the auditioning behind the screen, and they realized that before that they only had mainly male players, and then after they started playing behind the screen, and they couldn't make these unbiased, you know, this biased unconscious decisions based on sex. So then they started to have much more female players. So I think that is somehow, how can you do that, that you can't, you know, that you understand that you are anyway biased, but that you could try to avoid it. So I think that's the biggest hurdle. So how can we first admit that yes, we are unfortunately doing it, and then how can we, you know, find ways of you know, going around and trying to look for the, you know, the mental capacity, so to say, and not the how people look.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating point as well, with all of the biases that people
Mm.
have there, just for, you know, simple things like when someone's interviewing someone else, and there's um, I, I don't recall what the actual name for that type of bias is, but people looking to see if people are similar to themselves in their own view, and that
Yeah.
then these candidates will be judged favorably. And I guess in certain parts of Web3, especially when we're talking about DAOs, for instance, and these online-based communities, there's a lot more opportunity for it to be a lot fairer in that regard, because people, they've got pseudonyms, they don't necessarily want to say who they are. Of course, like, gender doesn't have to come into it at all, and people can really, it can be very meritocratic in terms of if someone's doing a good job for a community and contributing to that sort of structure, then I guess there's it kind of removes those barriers, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think that's in a way, everything has its pros and cons, but I would say that this fact that you can maybe you're not so much afraid even coming up with the new ideas. Of course, then there is the other negative effect that then people are also have no filters in vomiting at other people. So I think that's the problem, the balance, that how can you, but of course when you have this kind of let's say groups where somebody is a bit moderating it, then you can of course get rid of those let's say who misbehave or who don't follow the etiquette or the rules that the group has sent for them. So I think it's a great opportunity for many people in that way.
And so, in that regard, sort of tying together a few themes that I know that you're interested in, as for instance, being an angel investor as well, I certainly see DAOs from the perspective of someone running a business. There's things like tax reports, well, payment of taxes, public reporting that I need to do for my company. And I always think a lot about how the DAO sort of structure could simplify that, because all of a sudden you're providing all of the information that these government organizations that oversee companies need, and they can see it in real time. From the other side, in terms of the investment perspective, thinking about your angel, when you're making angel investments, do you see with the Web3 type structures where you have these more transparent governance processes and structures like with DAOs, but also the potential for liquidity events with tokens and so on? Do you see all of this as being quite game changing? Is it sort of filtered into your world of angel investing much thus far?
Yeah, so I personally I like the idea of DAOs very much. I just don't like the idea of tokens very much anymore.
Right.
Let's say I guess I burned my fingers with that enough times. And the thing is, probably because when I invest in something, I'm normally interested about it, and I would like to have some kind of input in whatever or in what they do. Of course, it's the founders project and they should be in charge, but still that when you don't have equity, you have nothing to say. There's like, you can of course have the tokens with the voting rights, the governance tokens, and this kind of stuff. You could how you could handle it, but I could imagine that for many business angels, like a DAO structure would be very interesting, so that they could actually invest in companies and in bigger pool of companies. And as you said, that everything else would be then taken care of automatically, but you could like choose the kind of DAO that has the focus that you're interested in. I think that's certainly something that I would be personally interested in. I was trying to suggest it also for the Meta Gamma Delta, but I think they were more into just giving the grants. And of course it demands a different kind of structure. When you start investing, you need to have, it's much more demanding in administratively way.
Mm-hmm. And you yourself, there, you have been involved in some smaller sort of DAO, would it be fair to say, experiments as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. Let's say some. I think probably the problem is that it's a bit oxymoron. If you have a DAO that is very dependent on one person, of course, it's not the DAO anymore. And I think that's somehow the problem, that you could find like some kind of balance, that you find a system where it's not dependent on one person, but it like the success is contributed by many members of the organization. So I think that's the optimum case.
And so just kind of rewinding a little bit to your perspectives on SaaS and fintech, because as I mentioned earlier, this is kind of the world that you come from, and you've got certainly in the business to business sales and marketing background. Do you see a Web3 challenging those kind of, say, SaaS models, for instance, in many ways? Or do you? It'd be interesting to get your perspectives there, as someone who's been very involved in both sides for a while now.
Yeah, I think personally that many people would maybe be more, let's say, willing to take part of things if they would have the feeling or the idea that at some point they might actually themselves also benefit from it. So I think, of course, when you have a normal traditional business with that sells you something and you get a product back, but if you would have like a system that is not so focused on just the profit of this one company that it's making, but you could be more collaborative and say maybe we could work together, a lot of companies, and let's say, for example, all the data that you collect, it would not belong only to one company, but it would actually belong to you. So, for example, a bit far-fetched, but like the company that I'm doing, the Mindclip Behaviour, where we are thinking that in a long time ahead, when people have a lot of data about themselves, they know how they behave and with which kind of environments they get more or less stressed, and with what kind of people they can work better. So they would own their own data, and let's say then when they're looking for a new job, they could just look at the databases and look at what my kind of profile, what job would fit me best. And then they could apply for the job, and the employee would not even know who is applying until they are, let's say, maybe the last 5 ones that they want to interview. So in a way, it's like, how could you make this kind of business model such that even the user feels like they are benefiting somehow of it? So I think that's always the problem, of course, with companies with the quarterly incentives and how they are structured and how they are sharing the profits. That I'm certain that with time there will be more this kind of collaborative business models where the users also feel like they're contributing and they're also getting something back.
So it's kind of like encoding like the culture of a company in a way that people can kind of see how compatible they are with that. Is that right?
Because I think, but I understand that it's scary sometimes for people and companies, because in a way then you are transparent. It's easy to say that these are our values and this is how we do, and when most of the people you ask in the company, they totally don't agree. And if it's really like that, you're saying this is how it is, and you could have like a transparent way of even, I don't know, displaying, for example, you do a survey in your company and ask what opinion people are, and everybody can contribute anonymously their votes, and then it could be displayed some way, internally even. But at most companies are not even doing that, because if you get results that you're not happy with, you don't want to share it. So I think and I think also we humans are very individualistic. We are very much what is it in for me. So it's I think when we look at the world today, it's hard to believe. I hope so, certainly, but sometimes it's very hard to believe that we are moving towards a society that is more caring about us and not about me as an individual. Go the wrong way from your SaaS point of view, but yes.
No, I think it's interesting to hear these angles though as well, because as you say, the field of organizational behavior is something that's it is very complex. They're complex systems at the end of the day, these organizations, and so I'm sure there's often people feel that these sorts of, whether it's surveys or these questionnaires, they kind of feel like it's more a box ticking exercise. But I guess as things become more sophisticated and the understandings of the psychology and how to apply that to the workplace improves, I presume there's all sorts of opportunities there.
Yeah, and I think it's always like the person using the tool or whatever, they have to have a feeling that they have some benefit of it, because nobody is going to go and do stuff if they think it's just done to monitor me as an individual so the others can benefit of it. But if the main purpose would be that how can we help you as an individual to perform better, in wherever, if you decide to stay here, you decide to go somewhere else, but it's like that you start from the well-being of the individual, and then you can when it's like they say about families, that if the mother is feeling good, the kids are feeling good either also. So I think this is like that we understand that we all contribute to this, well-being or not well-being of the team. And I think, it goes then, of course, broader, the whole society. So that being authentic, being true to yourself. And maybe that is like something where we can do with technology, because there you can't lie. It's like anything that's in the blockchain, it's there. You can't go afterwards and no, I didn't say that. I'll just take it out, like this is of course the challenge again. And with our right to be forgotten, it doesn't exist because you can't be forgotten. So maybe it will teach us a bit more patience, and a bit more, this kind of we restrain ourselves about this immediate, feedback that we want to always tell to people what we think about stuff when it's even not very important. So that is, maybe that's something we will evolve as humans, in this society. Who knows?
Yeah. And so, because I'm kind of playing this through in my mind as well, because I think it's a fascinating concept. And again, my more limited perspective would be thinking in terms of, say, Myers-Briggs. Now, I know it's not kind of the only approach, and there's certainly, I'm sure there's many more kind of behavioural models that are far more appropriate. But people have certain personality types there, and so it's thinking, how compatible could it be with an organisation, but doing it in a way that I guess protects the end user, so to speak, so that they're not having to reveal their cards, so to speak, and say, this is me, and then the organization is sort of deciding, oh, we don't want that. It's more that they can kind of see it from their perspective, their compatibility, and their kind of privacy as the first class citizen in that sort of inquiry, so to speak.
Yeah, in a way, that's what we're doing. So I think it doesn't matter. I'm sure almost all kind of ways of analyzing behavior is good. So ours is very similar to like what you mentioned, and there are many others. I think the problem with the typical behavior style analysis is that you do the analysis and then okay, this is I am, whether it's a number or color or code or whatever. That then what? So this is like I think the traditional way is to put you in a box and think that that's where you're gonna stay. But so we try to start with the point of view that this is the starting point, and so where did you want to go? So that's like, if you don't want to go anywhere, then okay, that's also fine, because nobody else can move you but yourself. And then the idea is that if people have sometimes this kind of weird concept that we should all be a certain kind of type. But of course, if you think about it, if everybody would be like you, if I think everybody would like me, wow. That. So I think this is when we would understand that it's a gift to have different kind of people around. Of course, we don't probably want to have those many narcissists, too many of them in our team. But let's say they are still quite rare. So normal humans, it's a benefit to have different kind of behaviors, and then that the person has the right to choose, if they want to change or not, and then that you could have, like you say, you own your data, you own your own, where you want to go. But of course, you can't grow in a vacuum, so you need the feedback from other people. And I would say that if you are not willing to take the feedback, then you probably should consider a job coding alone somewhere in a corner, so nobody needs to give you feedback. So that's always it's always a choice, and of course, it comes with responsibilities, to the environment where you choose to be in.
Absolutely. And so, thinking back just to your accelerator. With the teams that kind of go through it, what are the, apart from blockchain itself, did you see like a lot of convergence between the different sort of areas that it focuses on? In the list, you have fintech, regtech, cybersecurity, insurtech, proptech, and of course blockchain. And are you seeing a lot of crossover yet between those different fields at this point?
I think probably because most of those startups that they came, they had their business idea, they had let's say the first funding. So let's say they maybe specialized more in a certain kind of direction, where they started from. But there's one case I remember, they came with two business ideas. You're like, it's very difficult to do two different businesses from the beginning. And the funny thing is that they actually skipped the other idea. They had like a hardware and software, and they focused on the software. And later on, like I think now 4 years later, they are also doing the hardware, but they found a different kind of financing method, for that. So now it fits with the system. But it's like maybe the idea is like most people who ever try to develop any kind of software is that you have to start from a simple point of view, and then you can broaden up, because if you can't do everything at the same time, because you have to start from somewhere. So I think that's mainly the idea. I'm trying to think about if anyone really totally started doing something else. Let's say many times, of course, what happens in startup life, that startups die and then they found something else, a new company that's something maybe totally different. So that certainly, of course, happens.
And do you think when we look at kind of where we are right now with respect to the broader kind of blockchain and Web3 ecosystem, you're seeing all these these huge unicorn status firms and so on. Do you feel like these sorts of valuations are justified, or are we in like this major hype cycle at the moment? Because it's feels like there's a lot of very large valuations, but then potentially the technology is not being as widely used as it can be down the line.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the FOMO, fear of missing out, that these people with, there's obviously a lot of cash around,
Mm.
and or is it the fact that that we don't know yet? I think it's always like they say that it's not the fool is not the one who asks for the money; it's the one who pays for it.
Mm.
So yeah, so maybe there is this kind of very competitive situation where people are afraid that if I don't invest in it, then somebody else will, and then this is going to be the next Airbnb. So I don't know if it's that the founders are great in creating this kind of fear in the investors, or probably there is, I'm sure, a lot of research behind, and they're looking at in which way this field is, for example, Web3 is developing, and they are seeing great potential, but since you can't know, so it's better to bet bet big on many of them. So yeah, but I personally think also that they are crazy, the evaluations, but let's I guess these guys have enough, or ladies have enough chips to play with, so they're all in.
And make those big bets.
Yeah.
Uh, what about NFTs? Because I know it's not something that we've discussed so far, but they've certainly kind of transcended into popular culture as well. And there's certainly one of the theses that I think about, and certainly other people do, is this idea of tokens being the equivalent to the website in terms of you can tokenize basically absolutely anything. NFTs are one. Some people would say question how great an example it is, but it's certainly been phenomenally successful so far.
Yeah.
Are you kind of on the fence or excited about them, or where do you kind of sit with your views on
Well,
them?
I think how it's today, I find it ridiculous, to be honest. But the thing is, I mean, these apes, whatever they are, selling for millions, it just, I don't understand. I think it's more like, yeah, well, my honest opinion, it sounds a bit like, rich kids showing, look what I can afford.
Mm.
This is what I have. But if you think about this, like non-fungible tokens, I think it has a great potential. I mean, you could, I think we were already, like years ago, playing with the idea that how nice would it be, let's say you own a house and then you need cash for something. You need to, I don't know, you want to do another education or whatever that the reason is that you need money, that you could tokenize your house and sell, part of it, on the market, and you wouldn't have to go through a very complicated processes, especially in Germany. Everything has to go through the notar, and it is really a difficult process to do anything that it has to do with the changes of ownership. So I think for that, I think it's amazing. And of course, you could do it with small things also. You could maybe even sell services or whatever, that it is, like this kind of circular economy, that we used to have, a long time ago. So I think in that way it's great. I'm not personally excited about this, as I said, this weird ape things or whatever they have on the market. But then again, I think it's probably a great opportunity also, like for like real artists, those who, to get reach, for people, they can do things, and you make them unique. And although you can of course copy the picture, but you can copy
Yeah.
many pictures. So that, I think it could create great opportunities for those who otherwise couldn't reach out to people. And now with social media and other means, you can really reach out to big audiences. So yeah, a bit divided, but I think once it becomes more legal, I said, like when it becomes like real, stuff that we can tokenize, then I think it's going to be exciting.
And putting your kind of sales and marketing type hat back on as well with respect to Web3 and different product launches there, did you see the kind of the approaches that companies need to take especially when they're trying to grow as businesses and so on? Do you feel that the more sort of Web3 community focused approach is very different to what has gone before, or is kind of similar, just maybe some different things in the mix like Discord and more, I don't know, Twitter activity, for
Yeah.
instance, in the case of Web3?
So I don't know. Maybe of course, when you think about, if you think, I think like the ways of connecting with the communities. It's more, of course, like this B2C or C2C connection. Of course, businesses, you don't connect with them through Discord or other ways. In a way, I think it's still like advertising, you could say. I'm personally not a B2C person. I'm not so much into the consumer space, or never was. But I could imagine that maybe what is compelling to people also is that normally you get like immediate response. Of course, you have nowadays also in the traditional businesses, you have all kind of chatbots and stuff like where you can find quickly information. But many times it feels that in this Web3 space, people are much more engaged. They are really like they are like true believers on whatever topic they choose, and where they're in. Of course, there also the trouble is then that you have a lot of scammers and these kind of things that how can you quickly get rid of that part, which is always, of course, when you have an open space, they're bound to be there. And so yeah, I think it probably is easier for people. They are making themselves very approachable, and I think in that way you can get quickly information. Of course, you have to always double confirm that the information is true that you're getting, and not get scammed away with people who are trying to take use of you. So
I think this is a very interesting point that you raise as well with respect to the differences between B2B versus B2C, because certainly in the B2C world of blockchain protocols, we're seeing a lot of token type incentives and so on. And do you feel that could actually start to become the case in B2B once if organizations become comfortable holding tokens in their treasury, then they start working with a protocol, they maybe build up a treasury there, or they get some sort of return as a result of using that on an ongoing basis. Do you think it could play out in that sort of way?
Well, how I think about it, I think maybe if it would be more like in a case of like an NFT. Let's say you buy like services, you don't have to maybe transfer cash anymore, because you have tokens, so NFTs that have certain values, and then you could like I said, it's again this kind of like a circular economy. I don't know if the tax guys are gonna like it because how are we want to cut from these transactions? So but I think that could be very well. Maybe it makes things easier or more. Of course, you have to set the price for whatever. But maybe, yeah, so maybe certain things could happen faster, or they could be more transparent. Let's say maybe the stock levels of certain things. You could immediately do like this kind of probably. I think they're doing it already, even in a normal, like they replenish the stocks automatically. You probably don't need a token for that. But yeah, so maybe this kind of more interconnected world could be like, I don't know, with autonomous driving and these kind of things that the devices can all communicate to each other in a secure way. When you think about trucks driving I don't know, half a meter from each other, full speed through US or the European autobahn, but that you can then avoid that not somebody hijacks your vehicles, or wants to crash them all and holds you in a hostage with that. So I think that's, of course, I think cybersecurity is going to be a huge topic in already, of course, is today, but even more in the future. Because the more you automate stuff, the more certain you have to be that there is no, let's say, ways of intruders to get into the system.
Yeah, definitely, and certainly with the kind of going from, it feels like there's often a lot of successful B2C type platforms can become B2B as well. Thinking in terms of Twitter, WhatsApp, these sorts of platforms have got very corporate focused offerings now. Yeah. But you say the security side of things for these large organizations is absolutely paramount, though, and they want to make sure that everything's is absolutely rock solid there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your book as well, because I know that you published a book recently, How to Fuck Your Startup. Sorry, How to Fuck Up Your Startup. Sorry. Yeah, please tell us more about it. It's got a very engaging title, and certainly I think it's something that a lot of people probably want to avoid doing, which I'm sure there's a big market for it.
Yeah, I hope so. So this is how it looks like. But yeah, so why did I actually write it? Of course, I think it's sometimes you going through certain processes and you decide the best way to deal with it is to just write it down. And yeah, so for me it was started with after one let's say interesting experience in this space where I was running a company in that was funded by an ICO. And I think the main reason there, what I realized is that you need to have governance to make things work, and then you need to have this like some kind of accountability that somebody else can put on you, so you can actually do the steps that you said you would. And I think it's of course you can use these learnings in any place that you are in the world and in any kind of companies. But I think with the startups especially, and I'm actually going to give a lecture in school here in a business school here nearby about why is it so important when you set up a company that who do you set up it with. Like the idea of this, like setting up a company with the co-founders. My lawyer told me a long time ago that this is much more important than even who you marry, because you can always divorce your partner, but you cannot really very easily get rid of your co-founder if you make a stupid contract. So I think that's like the point of view that when it's like the starting point when you set up a company, you think about who do you set it up, why are you doing it, what kind of humans are these other people that you are setting it up with, and of course then who do you hire, what kind of team do you have, how do you live up to the expectations that you have, what kind of culture do you build, and also once how do you handle with difficulties, what do you do when things go wrong, when you really fuck up, and do you take accountability or do you just try to brush it under the carpet. And of course some interesting experiences, not only with like with blockchain companies that I came across, but I think it's like with everything, being curious, wanting to learn about stuff, and then getting over it. It happens to many people. So I think that was for me the greatest learning, that it's not the end of the world. We all learn, and we move on. So that's the main thing.
It's fascinating that one of the inspiration points was the experience with this ICO based company that you'd worked with previously, and so are you able to kind of expand a little bit more on the sorts of mistakes that they'd made, or similar companies that you'd worked with had done, which had really created this great material?
Yeah, I think I'm sure anyone who was there around 2017, would probably roll their eyes and wonder what the hell is going on when people raised, tens and hundreds of millions based on a bloody, I don't know, A4 and pictures of people as the team members or advisors that had, if you had any sense of, decimal or brain power, you could understand that this could not be achieved in the next 10 years, doing this. And then they had like, the next first year, we're going to do this. And second, but maybe if you had the 100 million or 200 million, you could have done it, and you hired, all the best brains in the world. So in the way the learning, like that, if something is too good to be true, it most probably is. And I think this is like, this has always been the case. But we people are a bit greedy. We want to think that maybe this time it will work out, and I will be the lucky one. So this is, I think, the main learning, of course, and then also that it is, of course, not always easy even for the founders, who they make these promises, and I think it's easy in the phase when you make the promises, but then when you actually realize that you have to execute them, it of course becomes a bit anxiety feeling, because you maybe realize that to do it you need to actually hire the next 30 people, and you need to get to the next steps. And then it happens not only to ICO companies. I've also had discussions with people who get a large funding, even in a traditional company. And then suddenly you have all this money on your account and you have to start spending it. And the feeling when you understand, okay, when I'm hiring now the next 20 people, this money is going to last 1 year. And then I have no money if I'm not making money already. So of course it creates a lot of fear and anxiety in people. And if you don't know how to deal with it, you're going to end up in a situation when you decide not to spend the money, because then it's going to last longer. But of course, then you can't build anything. So it's these kind of fears, and how to create, let's say, a network around you, that you can actually have someone like a sounding board who tells you that you're not that great. Many times during the 2017 still, people were hanging around with other people, we're great entrepreneurs who raised 20 million or 30 million or whatever, 50 million, and not thinking about it. It's, actually you just started. So it's what you're going to do with the money is going to actually decide if you are successful or not. So I think these, and then if you fail, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to learn? What are you going to learn from your failure, and that you can do better next time if you still decide that being an entrepreneur is your thing. So I think that's like, it's not only the ICO world, but it's of course the world after. But yeah, clearly I think the ICO world was crazy. I mean, there were of course a lot of let's say stuff that would not go through in a traditional financial industry. It would be called insider trading or whatever, when people were pumping tokens to crazy numbers and selling them before the market did. So yeah, I think it was a great learning, but I don't know if humans learn anything. Probably there's going to be. I think the NFTs showed us that people didn't learn anything. So
yeah. I think NFTs just reinforce how real a thing FOMO is, as you said earlier. Yeah. But certainly, as you say, with the running a business as well, it's and the fundraising, it's so true what you say in terms of people see these headline numbers. This company raised all this money, great, but then there's the reality that they need a plan for that. And with a business, nothing's ever certain. Whether maybe you've raised investment, but that's only finite. Maybe you've found product market fit and you've got good revenues coming on, but then someone else could come in and disrupt all of that. There's just so many variables there, and it's just I guess a lot of people, they don't kind of look beyond those headlines and what the actual reality looks like as such.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes for people, they see this world of entrepreneurship. Oh, it looks so glorious and so great. I want to be an entrepreneur. And then I always tell people that, well, are you willing to live 1 year without getting any pay? Can you do that? And if you can't do that, then you should already forget about it, because that's going to be probably the reality. Also, even when you set up a company, before you actually do get the money, it's only in the I would say those who already had a very successful company who get money like this. The others, they have to work for it, and it can take pretty long time before you get the cash.
Yeah, and I think someone who I know, he sort of articulates it thus. He says, well, if someone was to give you £1 million and you had to spend it in the next two to 3 years, what would you spend it on? But you've also got to make sure that you're bringing in, whether it's say 10k a month or an amount to offset it. So at the end of that period, you can pay back that loan as well. And so when people actually see the reality like that, I think it suddenly makes it a lot harder. One part to actually spend the money, but the other figure out how they're going to get the money to pay back the principal.
Yeah, it's not the gift, it's a normal, it's like a loan, and with a high interest rate.
Absolutely. So let's just go back to what we're talking earlier on about female founders as well, and that side, because it's certainly an area that is important to. I think hopefully there's going to be people listening as well who maybe they want to, females who want to find themselves, maybe start a business or make those right sort of steps forward to actually establish themselves in leadership positions. What would be the advice that you'd offer there?
Well, I first say that you have to want to become an entrepreneur. So it's not something that you can feed someone else and say, I think you should set up a company. But if you really have this feeling that you have a solution to something, that it's a problem, and not only for you but for many people, and that's something that they really want to have solved quickly, then I think you're onto something. If you can make others believe, at least a couple of other people, that they also agree with you that this is actually a great idea, and hopefully you can even found a company together with other people, then I think it's much easier, because it's very hard to set up a company alone. But then I always say, please do make a contract. Make a vesting contract with all your co-founders, because you might be very good friends, but you don't make a contract because you are not friends. You make a contract so you don't have to start arguing. But you all know from the beginning, if somebody decides to step out, they have to give the shares back to the company, or this kind of thing. So then there is no, everybody knows the rules. I think that makes it clearer for everybody, and it's easier then to actually go about, to because life changes, situations change, and we can't always foresee everything. But I think if as I said, if one really is into setting up a company, has a great idea, has believes that they have the execution skills, and as I said, is willing to work 1 year without money, so then I think you're already on a good path to, and then always test your idea with the smallest possible, like they call this, the MVPs, the minimum viable product, somehow to show what is it that you want to build, even on a website or some kind of mock-up or something, draw a nice picture, and to see what is the feedback you get. And then it's much easier to then for you also to believe in it, that what you're doing, because sometimes developing a software product is not doesn't always go go to plan or as fast as you think, speaking of experience.
Oh, cool. Well, Maria, it's been absolutely great to host you here today. If people want to follow you or reach out to you, are there any social channels that you're particularly active in that you'd encourage people to follow you on, or anything else?
Yeah, so I am relatively active at times on Twitter. So it's Pennanen Maria. And then I have a website. I should be more active. I'm always saying, my assistant keeps telling me, you have to post more stuff on there. And it's mariapennanen.com. So those, I would say, probably the most. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn. So happy to, if you have any questions, you can always drop probably there where I'm the most active, at least weekly. So I'm trying to focus on building my software, so not super, active on social media.
We'll link to those in the show notes. Maria, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you.
Thank you, Conor. It was a pleasure for me too.
Hi, it's Conor Svensson here again. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm really excited to share with you that I've written a book, The Blockchain Innovators Handbook, a leader's guide to understanding, adopting and succeeding with this disruptive technology. I've been wanting to share my learnings about blockchain and Web3 for a number of years with a wider audience, and I'm really excited that I can do this now. This book covers everything from the fundamentals of the technology through to opportunity identification and implementation for your business to ensure that you can be one of the big beneficiaries of the wider transition to Web3 that's taking place now. The book is available in physical as well as digital form. For more information, head to web3labs.com/innovators.